What if the compassion that defines your morality is actually a slow-acting poison, and the only way to save yourself is to stop feeling for everyone else long enough to remember who you are? In Suicidal Empathy, Dying to be Kind, evolutionary psychologist Gad Saad delivers a provocative cultural critique that transforms self-help into intellectual insurgency, proving that in an age of performative virtue, true kindness requires the courage to say no when the world demands endless yes. This isn't merely another polemic against woke culture or emotional exhaustion. It's a rigorously argued, psychologically precise exploration of how pathological altruism erodes identity, where every act of self-sacrifice carries the weight of evolutionary mismatch, and survival means reclaiming empathy as a finite resource rather than infinite obligation. From the first incisive narration, listeners are plunged into a landscape where moral signaling replaces genuine care, and burnout is mistaken for righteousness. Perfect for fans of contrarian nonfiction and stories where healing happens through boundary setting rather than boundless giving, this audiobook serves up relentless clarity, unflinching thematic depth, and a framework whose journey from self-erasure to sovereign compassion resonates with anyone who's ever been praised for disappearing. When Saad examines the epidemic of empathetic collapse among high achievers and caregivers, he expects to find individual pathology, not to uncover a systemic rewiring of human prosociality that rewards self-annihilation as moral superiority. But as he navigates clinical case studies and cultural trends, he realizes this crisis isn't about personal failure, it's about evolutionary betrayal. Saad masterfully avoids reducing his argument to anti-empathy rhetoric or his subjects to cautionary tales. Instead, he crafts a narrative where psychological science becomes liberation, where consent is renegotiated through biological reality rather than social expectation, and where freedom requires honoring our species' limits without shame. The audiobook narration amplifies this intellectual urgency, capturing Saad's academic precision, softening into compassionate clarity, while secondary voices shift subtly between defensive virtue and exhausted honesty, making every example feel like both diagnosis and invitation. You don't just hear the thesis unfold, you feel the seismic shift of minds learning that sustainability isn't selfishness, but the foundation of authentic care. What elevates suicidal empathy beyond typical cultural critique is its nuanced portrayal of pathological altruism as adaptive misfire rather than moral failing. Saad isn't merely condemning overgiving, he's confronting how modern environments hijack ancient pro-social instincts designed for small tribes, challenging the notion that worth equals utility to strangers. His framework evolves through acts of radical reciprocity with evidence, integrating evolutionary biology with clinical psychology without reductionism, setting intellectual boundaries that protect both rigor and relevance, and defending the right to selective empathy against cultures that mistake universality for virtue. Supporting concepts add vital texture, attachment theory reframed through resource allocation, moral philosophy tested against behavioral data, even language itself, rendered as living system whose terms encode assumptions about sacrifice. Every interaction reinforces the book's core truth. In worlds built on extraction, preservation is rebellion, and attention is the only true currency. Even the rhetorical mechanics serve thematic depth, with case studies mirroring emotional integration and scientific citation becoming metaphor for accountable truth-telling. For audiobook listeners, this production is an immersive exercise in cognitive recalibration. The narrator embodies Saad's evolving perspective with remarkable range, from scholarly authority to trembling conviction during human moments, while supporting voices are distinguished through vocal textures that honor complexity without caricature. Sound design enhances atmosphere without overwhelming immersion, distant ambient tones marking conceptual transitions, rain against study windows during vulnerable reflections, the hushed rustle of pages syncing with breath during moments of synthesis, all anchor abstract stakes in sensory reality. Pacing mirrors the rhythm of intellectual awakening, deliberate during foundational arguments and reflection, then surging with urgency as cultural patterns collide with biological imperatives. Whether you're commuting through daily demands or sitting in twilight stillness, the audiobook creates a portable sanctuary where slowness feels sacred and presence feels like a gift. It's storytelling as embodied validation, transforming passive listening into active participation in a journey where healing isn't about feeling more, but about feeling wisely. Ultimately, Suicidal Empathy redefines cultural critique by centering evolutionary wisdom within psychological frameworks. It satisfies cravings for intellectual rigor and emotional payoff, while delivering substantive commentary on moral injury, gendered caregiving, and the radical act of trusting your biology when culture demands transcendence. No prior knowledge of Saad's work is needed. It stands confidently as a complete emotional odyssey. If you've ever wondered whether kindness can coexist with self-preservation, or if true strength requires saying no in a world that glorifies yes, this audiobook will affirm that sometimes the most compassionate act is refusing to die for someone else's comfort. Press play, set down the martyr's crown, and prepare to believe that even in landscapes shaped by obligation, hearts still find ways to beat sustainably. Your next essential read isn't waiting in endless giving, it's waiting in the brave, trembling choice to give from fullness, not emptiness.